welcome to Wednesday's edition of the Pastor's Heart. So glad you could join us. I tell you, we're having a great time here in the studio, and I'm hoping that you're getting some of this at home as well. We are talking about the purpose of the church and how we've been kind of distracted, and we haven't really been doing what we're supposed to be doing. And it's been really good. It's kind of it can be a hard word, but I tell you what, it's a life-giving word. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But as always, we like to start off our programs with an invitation for you to call the prayer line. Prayer and praise line is what we're calling it now. It's an opportunity. If you've got something going on in your life, we care about that, and we believe in the power of prayer, and we want to join with you in the power of prayer. So call the number that's on the screen, 478-474-3986. Also want to remind you that you can email your prayer request in, prayer@wgnm.com. Now, we take these prayer requests. The prayer requests we take and we pray over. If you want us to call you back, leave a phone number and we'll call you back and pray with you. We also want to take those praise reports. We're so hungry for praise reports. You know, the Bible tells us that God inhabits the praises of His people. And I heard someone say recently that one of the reasons that He does that is that He knows everything. He's heard everything before. But when there is fresh praise coming from one of His people, one of His children, to Him, that's new to Him. That's something He hasn't heard yet. And so He's drawn to that. So we want to give praise to Him, and we want to hear what God's doing in your life. So call that number as well and leave us a praise report. We'd love to hear from you about what God is doing in your life. The number is 478-474-3986, and the email address is prayer@wgnm.com. I also want to quickly remind you, because I want to get into the meat of the word today. We talk about new wineskins. And we've been so thankful for all those that have been giving towards that fund to help get us to high definition. Now that we've got the switching gear in and ready to do that, the next big project that we want to tackle is the multicasting. That will give us the opportunity. If you can imagine, we have already 2 channels coming off of our transmitter, but the multicasting will allow us to do 4 channels off of our transmitter. We're going to be adding a couple. We're going to be adding CTN Lifestyle to the lineup, and also a straight feed from CTN in Clearwater. So that's our next big project. It's probably going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10,000 to complete. So we need your help on that. We'll be putting the information on how to send a check or money order to that fund. Just make sure you put down new wineskins, and we'll make sure that we get that to the appropriate place. So we thank you for your support on that, as always. Now, on to our guest today. We have Pastor Troy Wynn from Freedom Church, and we have been feeling some freedom today, this week. Freedom Church in Warner Robins. They're on Moody Road. Service times on Sundays are 9:45 and 11:30. If you want to get most of the information, thefreedomchurch.us is their website. So you want to make sure that you go to that website. You can also call them, 478-235-9917. If you need some information, they'll be glad to help you out. If you're looking for a church home, I would highly encourage you to check them out. It's a fresh wind in the body of Christ that is needed. Especially in some of the stuff that I tell you what, follow them on Facebook. It's the stuff that's going on at the church is just phenomenal. The people, and you can see what's happening in people's lives, which is that's where it gets good, because people's lives are changing. You know, I was part of a church back in the 80s. And that was in the same town, and I had left and to move to another city. But when I came back and went to a different church, was just feeling, and God led me differently. And but I had occasions frequently to go back to that church. Family members were there and whatnot. But it was amazing to see there were people who had been there even long before I left, but I had been gone for maybe 10 years. And to see people still dealing with the same stuff that they'd been dealing with 10 years before. Yeah, no. And, you know, there's some personal responsibility in that, but there's also some responsibility for that shepherd. Right. Not pushing people to grow. Yeah. You know, if you're still Debbie Downer, right. You know, after 10 years, you know, you don't have to be, you know, Miss Cheerleader or anything, but right. There's 10 years of being under somebody's care. There should be some growth. Absolutely. And, you know, it's not always going to be pie in the sky and blue skies and whatnot, but it's, you know, they're just, I would go back and I'd see people, there's several of them, just no growth. Wow. And so, you know, if you're in church and you're growing, it's amazing how you feel. If you're growing, it's amazing how you feel the church is growing and how the church is doing. So, absolutely. Maybe some of the problems are you. Did I just say that?
Yeah, you said that.
So anyway, but there is something to be said about a church that is encouraging, gently coming alongside, absolutely. Being co-laborers in your growth. Absolutely. And this is one of those places that will do that. You can see the testimonies that are coming forth on social media. People are growing at that church. Amen. So if you're interested, if you're looking for a church home, or like I said earlier this week, I've got a real burden right now to make a call. If you're in a dry, dead church, it's time to get out. And if you're in Warner Robins, I would encourage you to check out Freedom Church. There's other good churches in Warner Robins that are going and blowing. But this week, we're talking about Freedom Church. That's right. So, and I would, you know, and I always encourage everybody to check out the churches of the pastors that we do, but that's because the Lord and I are selective about the people we bring on the pastor's heart. So,
thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
We've been talking about the purpose of the church. Yeah. And so let's just get back into it because we keep running out of time.
Well, I tell you what, you gave me a great segue. You talked about growth. And when you were talking, I was thinking when the church does not have growth, and I'm talking about tangible growth, where people aren't growing, we need to go and check the purpose. Because everything that has purpose, that functions within its purpose, functions properly. A car is designed to get you from point A to point B. That's its purpose. When something's wrong with the purpose, the car doesn't get you from point A to point B. It doesn't function the way it's supposed to function. Church is supposed to help people grow. That's it's just the bottom line. There was a movie called Jurassic Park. Everybody's seen it. They've had several series where these dinosaurs, they keep having this obsession with keeping dinosaurs alive and creating new dinosaurs. And the first time I saw Jurassic Park, I thought about the church. Because when the church doesn't know its purpose, it becomes Jurassic Church. It becomes the church of what used to be instead of the church of what should be. And whatever happened yesterday was awesome. Whatever God did 20 years ago was incredible. But sometimes we can be so addicted to the past that we miss the future. Right. And the future has to be focused on what is God saying now. Not that he changes, but God has a purpose for 2015. And a 2015 Buick looks different from a 1975 Buick. Now, they're both cars, but they look different. And the 2015 has more amenities, has more luxury, it rides better, has better gas mileage. If the church isn't operating more efficiently and more effectively, could it be that we're still in 1975 when we should be in 2015 with a 2015 purpose that kind of evolves with the people's needs, because people are changing, and we have to not change the word, but we have to receive from God fresh methods that allow us to minister to people. And I think that's our purpose, to always be on the cutting edge of what God is doing.
And that's what we're trying to do here too, just to relate it to the station.
Absolutely.
Changing over to high def, it should have been done 10 years ago. But we're pushing to make this changeover, and that's one of the reasons why we went ahead and got the cameras first, so that we would have a library of high def material when we do flip the switch. And you know, because it's changing. You know, TV doesn't look the same as it did before. You know, years ago.
Not at all.
And we've got to keep up.
I got a question for you. What happens if you don't change?
we'll get.
You're going to like this.
What?
You're going to get kicked to the curb.
Yeah.
You're going to be obsolete. You're not going to be effective. After a while, you're not going to be attractive.
Right.
Effectiveness affects attractiveness. So the HD keeps you effective, which continues to make you more attractive. Well, shouldn't the church be effective and attractive? So we thought when we chose purpose, the church could be effective, but the church can't be attractive. Christ was attractive in ministry. People followed Jesus into the desert, not knowing when they were going to get home, not packing a lunch. Who follows somebody? He's not hooping, he's not hollering, he doesn't have an organist with him. He's just teaching the word of God. And he's teaching it in such a way, an effective way, that people follow him and they forget about eating. They forget about using the bathroom. That's an effectiveness that's attractive. Why? Because Jesus walked in his purpose, which was to teach the gospel in a way that people could relate to. He wasn't highfalutin. He didn't use big words. He used metaphors, agriculture metaphors that they could understand. And purpose says, if you're going to be effective, you got to understand that effectiveness really is what makes you attractive. And the church in many parts of our country are no longer attractive. And I'm not talking about attractive because we got big bands and flashing lights. I'm talking about attractive to the degree where people are attracted because they know I can come here and I can get a word, my life can change, I can grow. So growth and purpose, as far as I'm concerned, they should go hand in hand. Hand in hand. No growth, no purpose.
Absolutely. There's just something to it about, anything that doesn't grow is either dead or inanimate.
That's right. Wow.
We've got light stands in this room right now, and those, they don't grow.
Right.
Because they're inanimate objects.
Right.
But yet, if you've got a plant and it's not growing, it's dead.
Wow. Man.
I have several dead plants.
Well.
Brown thumb. But there's just something about growth, and it's a continual, perpetual thing.
No, it doesn't stop.
It never stops because there's so much to learn about God, and there's so much to learn about what He wants you to do, and what He's got for you. That it's a walk. It's a continuing thing.
Yeah, I like to call it an adventure.
Oh yeah.
I believe following Christ is an adventure, especially when you're tied up in the purpose. Isaiah 58:1, and this will lead us into something we were talking about earlier quite perfectly, I think. Isaiah 58:1, we're talking about purpose, and here's another facet of the purpose of the church. It says to cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. So we're talking about what is the purpose of the church. One of the many purposes of the church is to stand up against that which is not right. We cannot ignore the ills in our society because we want to be politically correct.
Right.
You cannot be politically correct and always flow in your purpose. Because sometimes purpose will pull you slap out of political correctness. Jesus had that issue. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John had that issue because purpose will pull you out of your comfort zone.
Right.
When God puts a purpose in your life, He doesn't care anything about you being politically correct. But when we deny the purpose of addressing the social ills, cry aloud and spare not, and lift up your voice like a trumpet and show my people their transgressions, means that we have an obligation as a church, a purpose, to speak against that which is not right, such as abortion. Yeah, it's one of the social ills of our society that continues to grow. But listen to the voices that are coming out of the church. And again, every problem is a leadership problem, as far as I'm concerned. How many pastors have you ever heard preach a message or a series on abortion? We might mention it, but do we really stand boldly and say abortion is wrong, even if it's legal? Do we really say that?
Right.
I, as an African-American pastor, have to stand in my pulpit, and I have to address it because African-American people are guilty and responsible for the highest numbers of abortions in our country. It's a fact. Now, I cannot speak against it, or I can speak against it in love, but I still have to address it because that's part of my purpose.
Right.
Purpose demands that when you see an injustice, you give up the right to be silent. We have to speak.
I'm ready to rock your world.
All right, rock my world.
I actually got a hold. It's on my it's still on my desk, and it disturbs me every single time.
Yes, sir.
I found for a while ago there was a 40 days of prayer to end abortion.
Yes, sir.
There was a counter move to that for clergy,
Okay.
men and women who supposedly represent Jesus Christ. 40 days of prayer for abortion.
Get out of here.
And I read I read through that, and
Wow.
it just sickened my heart to know that there were men and women of the clergy
Wow.
making proponents or being in favor of
Wow.
abortion.
Man.
It just hurts.
Yeah.
And I share this a little bit. Most people know. I've got 2 boys that are adopted. Both of our birth mothers
Wow. indicated
they considered abortion
Wow.
during their process,
Wow.
during their pregnancy. And when I take it personal, I take the abortion issue personally.
Absolutely.
I've got 2 little miracles who could, and as you try to figure out what would we do without them.
Right. Absolutely.
These 2 young men that I have,
Wow.
that God has placed in my care, and just the things I think I see God's got for them.
Yeah.
And that purpose snuffed out.
Wow.
Through abortion.
Man.
And there's other ills we can talk about, but
But you're onto something here.
the abortion issue is those are real babies.
Absolutely.
And we're taping this. I say taping. We're recording this at the same time as these awful videos of Planned Parenthood are coming out.
Yeah.
Where they're selling body parts.
Unbelievable.
And if that's not an atrocity, and I tell you where, it's amazing to me that we would allow this to go on just because the people we voted for
Absolutely.
are for it.
Absolutely.
If this kind of stuff, I'll tell you what, it's this issue, and I have to give credit. His name, I had a youth pastor named Ray Talley, and I hope one day he gets to see this.
Wow.
When I was in 7th grade, maybe, I was a young man in the youth department, in the youth group, and one Wednesday night during youth group, he showed us about abortion.
Wow. Okay.
He showed us pictures of the bodies that had been chopped up. And I know this is getting a little graphic, but that affected me.
Yeah.
That one night, other than my salvation, and was probably had a bigger impact on my life, because I look at it back now. I mean, we're talking, 30-something years ago. That affected the way I vote.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That affected the way I treat life.
Absolutely.
That affected now with my 2 children. That affected my desire to adopt.
Absolutely.
I remember being a young man engaged to a young lady, and we even talked about purposefully adopting, not necessarily out of necessity, but just having one child and then adopting a child.
Right.
And now, of course, with me and my wife, it was for both of them. It was a necessary adoption. But
wow.
I grieve with. At the same time, when I stand up against abortion, I don't want to harm those women who have had abortions. They've been harmed enough.
Absolutely.
To scream at them and to shout at them is not. No. We've got to have a ministry that comes around them. And if Saul could kill Christians.
Right.
And then go and have his Damascus Road experience.
Right.
And then come back and write 2/3 of the New Testament.
Right.
There's got to be, he had to have killed some people he ministered to.
Right.
Had to be relatives of people he killed.
Absolutely.
And so there had to be some, there had to be some of that, some forgiveness, some understanding of that. And we've got to have the same thing
absolutely
with these people. I'm going to let you chime in here in a second. I get
show.
off on this. CTN now has a program called Real Life, and the whole program is designed with testimonies of women who have had abortions, and how how they've been ministered to by God through that, and about that, and how they had to, they had to tell their children that they had an abortion, or their children are going to look at them differently. But the other thing that we do is we talk about the effect that abortion has had on men. There was one pastor who he was dating a girl. He got her pregnant. He paid for the abortion, took her to the clinic. He went on to be a pastor, but he also had a gambling addiction that was rooted in the guilt that he felt with that. Well, he dealt with the gambling addiction, and then a few years later, he just realized he still had dealt with the root. And so finally, he got up in front of his church and he asked for forgiveness, ready to tender his resignation. But when he stood down from the pulpit and he did his confession, he was crying and praying, and the next thing he knew, hands all over him. And this program talks about this Real Life. So find Real Life. We have a church locally called Real Life, but their program is called Living the Real Life. CTN's program is called Real Life. Look for that program. It's a very good program on this topic. So I hate to do a little plug there, but
that's all right.
It's really good. A lot of good healing in that show, and it's one of those things I am proud to air that program. We air it 3 times a week because it's so good, and there's so much ministry involved in that.
Man, that's powerful. That's powerful.
But it's something we've got to. If we don't stand up for this as a church,
absolutely,
stand up for these babies. Absolutely. Stand up for these voiceless. I mean. There's something wrong. And I'm real big. I'm okay with the death penalty in criminal situations. I mean, it's not something I like. But I understand that to me that's a turn. But I tell you what, even with that, if I could sit down at the table with somebody else it's amazing. The other group is pro-abortion but anti-death penalty. I would sit down, if I could make the deal, if it's just up to me to make the deal, I would take the death penalty off the table if we could end this scourge of abortion. Okay, you know what? We'll deal with it a different way, but this right here is something that it's a mark on our country. It's a mark on our church.
Absolutely.
And there's Christian colleges out there that treat people who get pregnant so badly that abortion is actually high rates in some Christian colleges.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. And as you were speaking, man, I've got all kind of things. No. But you kind of you're lighting all these fuses, man, in my spirit. And I want to say something to you, and then I want to say something to the pastors and the people that follow us. Purpose should be a mechanism of prevention, not persecution. So I agree with you totally. We're not here to further destroy or harm those that have already had abortions. But as a church, we must cry aloud and spare not and sound the trumpet for prevention, for those that might take that path, because sometimes people just follow paths where there are no voices because that path is quieter. The abortion path is a quiet path, but it's a destructive path. Then you hit on something that made me say, wow, but then it made me reflect when you talked about there were actual pastors who came against the 40 days and they were, banding to stand up for abortion and not against it. And the thing that God said in my spirit while you were talking is that the church has been infiltrated. The church has been infiltrated because just recently when they legalized same-sex marriages, we had a news report here in Warner Robins, Georgia, of a church, of a pastor who was on the news telling people, come and join us tonight because we're going to celebrate this particular victory, same-sex marriage. And he himself was a gay pastor. And this may get me in trouble, but I am saying here, and you can edit it out if you think so, the church has been infiltrated by men and women of God who are not about the purpose. That's why God gave us a purpose for the church, because if he didn't, we would create our own. But he's very clear on certain things. He's very clear on abortion. He's very clear on same-sex marriages. But not only has the church been infiltrated, our government has been infiltrated. Now this is going to probably ruffle some feathers, but one of the things that we've got to understand is, and I respect our president because I respect the position of the president, but he got it wrong. He got same-sex marriages wrong. And we cannot vacillate in between what's right and what's wrong, because my purpose is to cry aloud, spare not, lift up the voice of the trumpet. That's my purpose. So I have to continue to speak against it. I don't care what president signs off on it. But if the church has been infiltrated and the government has been infiltrated, then we as a people and pastors have to now come and tell people, listen, we're not going to tell you how to vote, but we're going to tell you what to look for when you vote. There are 3 areas I think that we have a purpose to guide people on: the life issues, such as abortion, the marriage issues, such as what is marriage, and then the money issues. Now, this is where we've been deceived as a people. We go for the money issues, and we vote for the president that promises us a better income, a better economical status, promises us more money. God already promised his people, I'll take care of you financially.
Yeah.
If you tithe, give offering, first fruit, do what you're supposed to do, God says, I will take care of you from a monetary perspective. So we should never vote from a monetary perspective.
Absolutely.
But every time we go into the booth, we're voting for the guy that's promised us better wages, more money. God says, no, I put you here on the planet as ambassadors.
Right.
Your purpose is to protect life. Your purpose is to protect marriage. The same thing I established in Genesis. You don't find any money issues in Genesis, but you do find life issues because God gave Adam life. You find marriage issues in Genesis because he gave Adam a wife. God took care of the money issues because he put gold in the Garden of Eden, even though they didn't have a mall to shop at. God always takes care of us financially.
Absolutely.
But we've got to take care of the 2 issues of life. So I'm going to say this and I'm going to be done.
Yeah, we got.
When you vote, vote for life, vote for marriage. Not about money.
Yeah, well, send your cards and letters to. I tell you, this is one of those things too where this will tear down some walls.
I hope so. I really do.
And because we've built up this, and I think that I'm going to say this, the good side, the silver lining of the Supreme Court decision, is going to awaken. And we can talk about this tomorrow because I'm about to drop a bomb. It's going to awaken the African American church as far as voting on these issues.
I hope so.
I think so.
Amen.
So there we go. We dropped the bomb. Give you enough time to write the letters and stuff. We'll see you tomorrow on The Pastor's Heart.